You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lennon's podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're gonna make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lennon's. I hope everyone has had a good weekend or day or whenever you are listening to this episode, but this is a really good conversation that I was really excited to have, and I think it turned out to be a really insightful conversation. This week's guest features Benoni. Now, he is the president of Issa Rae's company, Raedio. Now, they are, interestingly, a company that is audio everywhere. So what does that mean? There is literally audio everywhere, in the elevators, at gas stations, at the pumps. When you turn your car on, there's beeping. There are sounds, little beeping for your devices at home, for your fire alarm, for everything. And they want to be the company that is working on the audio and creating those sounds. So we get into that and we dig into what that really means and how that is accomplished. We talk about what Benoni's day-to-day looks like as the president of Raedio, and he talks about a lot of business development, expansion, fostering a team. He talks about the importance of mental and physical health, the importance of work-life balance, which is very, very important because we can easily get burnt out with everything that we're doing, and it's such a high-paced society, especially in the music industry and tech and all of that stuff. We talk about turning the music industry on its head and why that type of innovation is needed and how Raedio is accomplishing that. Before I let you go, I want to let you know that I released a little ebook that you can purchase in the show notes below. It's on the 27 creative ways to get your music heard and get the attention that you deserve. So it's a 24-page ebook, and it's got like 9,000 words. I had been sitting on it for so long, and over this past week, I went through and revised it and edited it and updated it, and I hadn't really known what to do with it for like 2 years. So finally, I edited it and then released it. So you can grab that via the link in the show notes for $5, for $4.99. So I would appreciate that. That will help the show and show support for the show. But you can also follow me on Instagram and check out my website and subscribe to my email list. That helps me notify you when new episodes are live. And I would appreciate a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, there is a link in the show notes for them to fill out. I'm always looking for industry innovators. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Benoni. Great, we're live. Is Benoni, right?
Correct, yes.
Cool. And thanks for joining us today and for being on the show. I really appreciate that. I'm excited to chat with you because you've got such an interesting career and career path. So I'm really excited to dig in a little bit and learn more about you. Where are you coming to us from?
So I'm actually in my office. We have an office in Inglewood. I live in LA,
Okay.
Originally from Vegas, but currently in LA.
Okay. You're originally from Vegas?
Yeah, I was born in LA, but I grew up in Vegas, and I spent most of my childhood in Vegas. And then shortly after high school, I moved to LA, or after college, I should say, I moved to LA to pursue my music
Okay.
industry dreams.
Okay. And what was it like growing up in Las Vegas did you always know you wanted to be in music, or was that kind of a shift later on?
Growing up in Vegas was boring, to be honest. when you're, uh, when you can't gamble or you can't, be in the casinos like that. Although, in growing up in Vegas, you go to the casinos a lot because There's the movie theaters are inside the casinos, the bowling alleys are inside the casinos. So as a teenager, you do find yourself in casinos, but you can't really get into much until you get older. So, for the most part, it was like any other city. It was just the glitz and glam of Vegas. Um, but it was cool. There's it's interesting because I was just telling a friend the other day, Vegas has so much now that when I was
Hmm.
growing up it didn't have. Like they have sports teams now. Like I was there the other weekend and there was like a UFC fight going on, there was a boxing match going on, and then there was like the
Wow.
Pro Bowl and as well as the NHL All-Star game. So back when I was coming up, Vegas was boring, but now it's the place to be.
Yeah, I see that. And then they also got the Oakland Raiders. It's not Oakland Raiders, it's Las Vegas Raiders. So they moved the whole football team there.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot. I was there a few months ago, and it was like I've never been. So it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot going on.
for sure. They even have festivals now, which is crazy. It's
Y-
the fact that we have
Yeah,
festivals.
yeah. So um, growing up in Vegas was boring, and you kind of found yourself. Did you always want to be in music? Was that kind of your goal?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say I always wanted to be in music. I really just wanted to be famous and make a lot of
Mm.
money as a kid. That's kind of
Yeah.
like was my go-to. And then as I got older, I realized I just wanted to have impact, and I wanted
Mm.
to be able to have the life. Uh, I wanted to be able to have control of my life, and I found that music allowed me to have impact because I get to work on things that millions and millions of people have heard of or seen, etc.
Mm.
So it fulfilled that bucket of my life. And you do well in music, it could afford you a great lifestyle, or you do well in entertainment, right? It could afford
Sure.
you a lifestyle. So early on, it wasn't about the music industry, it was just about accomplishing those things, or trying to figure out the path to accomplish those things.
Mm.
And then as I got older, I'd probably say about high school age,
Mm.
is when I really decided I wanted to be in music because I had a nephew who was rapping, and he was a lot younger than I was. But I was like, oh, I could be your manager because I've always had, a strong business hand. I've always been an entrepreneur. So I was like, I can manage you. And that was kind of my first foray into the music business. And so I ran around Vegas managing him. And then, before you know it, you start to build up a roster of people that you manage. And, you
Mm.
just start to look for opportunities for them. And in that, that's what led to me saying, okay, if I want to take this to the next level, I need to move to LA, or New
Mm.
York, or one of those types of cities because I could kind of see the ceiling of how far I'm going to go in Vegas.
Mm. Yeah, do you think the industry has shifted quite heavily out to Vegas now? Because there's festivals that, I mean, I feel like a lot of bigger artists are moving out there, especially in the electronic music scene. A lot of artists are moving out there from LA because LA is just getting so expensive. So they're moving out to Vegas, and I feel like it's starting to become kind of a tech center as well. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I have friends that have definitely that are in the music industry that have moved to Vegas. The cost of living is a lot less, and just it's just a city that could be a lot of fun depending on what your lifestyle is and what you're into.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I think that at the end of the day, the industry is always still going to be LA, New York, sprinkle in
Hmm.
Atlanta, sprinkle in, not sprinkle in, let me give them respect. Also
Yeah.
throw in
Yeah.
Nashville because there's a
Yeah.
very big scene out there.
Sure.
But when you get to a point in your career where you're able to like move around and you don't have to be in the city where things are happening, like, that's the ultimate pinnacle. I have a friend that's a long time music manager, and he's from Vegas as well. He came to LA, cut his teeth, had a lot of success, and he was able to move back to Vegas. And I'm like, that's the ultimate goal, to be able to move back home, but still
Mhm.
be relevant in the business, still be able to earn a living. So that's the goal. And we'll see. We'll see when I get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great mindset. So going back just a little bit, you talked about having that mindset of you wanted to be famous and a rapper and have a lot of money, or you wanted to be famous and have a lot of money. When did that mindset kind of shift, and when did you realize that that's not about having a lot of money or fame? It's about impact.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. I'll probably say in high school. Once you get
Mhm.
older, it's just a
Mhm.
maturity thing. Where it's like, oh, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't have the words to articulate, or I didn't have the emotional maturity to really dive into what I was actually trying to get at.
Mm,
And so, you're in high school and you start to experience things and you start to become an adult and you start to have autonomy of your life. And with that autonomy, um, you know, it fosters new thoughts and new
mhm,
ways of going about things. And so I would say, relatively early on when I was able to be at a place where I really got to start thinking for myself.
mm,
And fortunately, you know, I understood that early on, and then I had something to work on, which was music and entertainment. And so as I matured, I got to hustle in the music and entertainment industry as well. So it was two paths that kind of grew up together within me, if that makes sense.
mm. Yeah, that does make sense. Um, so I want to talk about goals. Have you always had a goal? You talked about being in the music industry, you wanted to be in music, but what are some of the goals that you've set for yourself over the years? And then how have you achieved them kind of step by step?
Yeah, I mean, most recently, in running Raedio, I had a lot of goals. I still have a lot of goals. A lot of
Hmm.
those, I wouldn't say a lot of, half of the goals have been accomplished.
Yeah.
But the goal was to build a one-of-one music company that was respected, that was profitable, that was able to give opportunities to people outside of our company, talent and artists that we work with, and then
Hmm.
internally the staff that we hire, the team that we hire. Helping them realize whatever their individual goals are and setting a
Yeah.
platform for them to come in and add their individual expertise. So, I've accomplished all of those things in terms of, you know, the making the money, the business making money, the business providing opportunities for others, and creating a company that I quite frankly haven't seen in the industry before. I've seen pieces of what Raedio does in different companies, and I've seen other companies do those pieces very well. But I've yet to see a company that kind of ties everything together in the way that we do. Some notable
Mm,
comps, Rock Nation, is the company that I looked up to. I saw how they put everything together. I was watching a boxing match one time, and they represented the boxer, like Rock Nation Sports. And then they had a performer, musical guest performer, who was signed to their label, and then the host for the night was a talent that they managed on their talent management side as well.
mm,
And I was like, wow, this is cool. It's a whole thing. And so that's what I set out to do, and that's what I've done. But, when you're hustling and you have ambitious goals for yourself that no one else can really put on you, you kind of just keep going. And once you accomplish something, you say, okay, what's next? Let's go after the next thing. So
mm.
that's kind of how I've thought about goals and how I've gone about accomplishing it.
Hmm. So, how do you set? I know one of the important things with goals is setting something that's attainable, and a lot of people set a goal that's just not attainable within 3 to 5 years, and it's like, I want to be famous. Okay, well, that's a goal, but it's not something that's going to happen in a week. It takes a lot of time and practice and effort. So, how do you set reasonable goals between I want to be famous or I want to tour with this artist? How do you set reasonable goals, attainable goals to make sure that you're on track to get the main goal?
Yeah, I think to accomplish that, it's not about the goal. It becomes more about, uh, one, being grateful for the position that you're in,
Mm,
and two, taking a step back and realizing, giving yourself a break and realizing that you've accomplished things, right?
yeah.
I say that because there's a lot of times when you're chasing goals, to your point, you try to get to the end goal. But
Mhm.
along the way, there's things that you accomplish that are goals within themselves, even though it's not the finish line, it's the
Sure.
quarter mile mark, it's the half mile mark, it's the mile mark, right? And I
Mhm.
think that people fail to take pride in the process and the progress ultimately, right? So, when it comes to goals, I think you just have to take a step back and check off the list as you go along. And,
Mm,
the truth of the matter is there's some goals that we may never accomplish,
mm,
and it's hard for for us to admit that to ourselves. But if we're real with ourselves, there's some goals that we may never accomplish. But guess what? There's some goals that you'll accomplish along the way to that bigger goal that are still worthwhile. So I think it's about celebrating the progress and the process. And I think, that's a mindset thing more so than a goal chasing thing.
I love that optimistic mindset thing. Takes a lot of practice to do, and I've done that myself. Is having to take a step back and be like, I want to do this, but it's like, okay, but before I do that, I have to do A, B, and C, and to do A, I have to do these couple things, and it's just breaking it down. And then, even though it may be a really small win, it might be just getting an email back from somebody that you've been wanting to reach out to. That's a win.
Absolutely.
That's a step. It might be setting up a conversation with that person. That's another win. It might be something else. It might be just a personal win. Something you accomplished, something that you pushed off for so long. That's a win. And it's not minimizing those things with, I'm not doing everything. I took a mental health day. That's a win. That's all very important stuff in today's industry, and something we always kind of look past is if we're not working and working and working, we're setting ourselves back, and it's kind of a toxic mindset.
Yeah, no, it's very hard. Like when you start getting into comparisons, and this person has this or this person was able to
You know,
accomplish X, Y, Z, that's where a lot of that can like start to fester from. But it's really about understanding your path, and most importantly, understanding that your path may change, right? Like
mm,
we
absolutely.
all set out to do something in a very specific way, but
Yeah.
we all have found that that very specific way sometimes doesn't work, and sometimes you'll get accomplishments and it may not look like the way you thought it was going to look, but when it's all said and done, it was still the accomplishment that you wanted. So again, it's just about being open and just being in a place where you just kind of understand how things go, and take it from there.
Hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned radio briefly. Let's dig into that a little bit. What is radio? I'm curious to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Raedio is an audio everywhere company, and our goal is to provide audio for anywhere the audio exists. So anywhere in the world, any space, any medium, etc. So the way that I kind of look at it is, okay, if you get in an elevator and there's elevator music playing, I want that to be curated by radio. Then when you're
Mm,
in your house, you're sitting on your couch and you're watching TV, I want you to be watching a show that radio curated the music for. And then when you
wow.
go on Spotify and you listen to your favorite artist, I want radio to have that artist under its label. And so
Mm,
we're in, or if you go to Spotify, and you want to listen to a podcast, I want
mm,
radio to provide to be, the host of that podcast, or
mm,
to be in partnership with that host. So that's the best way to put it. We have uh, couple divisions of a couple verticals of our company. So we have the label, we have publishing, we have events, we have a library, and then we have music supervision. So there's 5 verticals to our business, and all of those seamlessly work together, and provide opportunities uh, for the company, and then again for the partners and the talent that we work with.
So for those verticals, do they cover everything that you want to do, or are there more verticals that you are going to need to add?
Honestly, I didn't mention podcasting as a vertical, but podcasting is a vertical that we just started. So
Mm,
that was kind of the missing vertical that we were in. So we just signed a deal with Audible. So we're going to be doing
mm,
more podcasts coming very soon. We've done podcasts previously with HBO and Stitcher, but this will be the first time there'll be radio original podcast, if you will.
mm,
But honestly, I think that everything that we want to do, um, it comes under one of these verticals that we already have. It's just
mhm.
about diving deeper and going along with the things that we're doing. The big goal is to start to get into industrial sound design, right? So I want
Oh, wow.
Mercedes or Ford to call me and say, hey, we have a new car, and that car, every time you press a button, that car makes a sound, right? Or check engine light comes on, there's somebody that needs to create that sound. So I want to
Sure.
create that sound. If you go to a hospital and it tells you that your IV is low, somebody has to make that sound. I want
Mm,
to be the person that makes that sound. So, or John Deere, I want to be making the sounds for tractors, even though I've never really been in a tractor in my life or probably anywhere close to a tractor. I know that that John Deere is like the creme de la creme of tractors, as far as I know.
Yep.
So I want to make the sound for that. So that's essentially the goal, and that's what we're working towards every day.
That's amazing. I've been around my fair share of tractors. I grew up in the Midwest, and to my high school, this house shows how small my town was, and we had to drive your tractor to school day. So everybody
Oh wow,
around, and they would drive big tractors, and then they would take up the whole parking lot, and everybody else would have to park on the street.
I
But
love
yeah,
it.
John Deere is creme de la creme, one of the best, and very recognizable brand. But going back, so you want to create like the beeping on an IV, or the elevator music, or all that stuff, or startup sounds for a car. But these sounds sound like they could be computer generated. Is
Mhm.
there some kind of like artificial intelligence that you guys could do, or are you actually going to have people designing these sounds?
Yeah, a lot of it is computer generated, but even with the computer generated stuff, it has to have inspiration from somewhere.
Mm,
The computer is not just making the sound just on its own accord. So
sure.
um and there's certain, I've had conversations where there's some things that are computer generated, but then there's a specific tone, and someone has to input the tone, like, oh, I want it to sound more rough, or I want it to sound more light. That's a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. There's just different
Yeah.
variations of sounds. And so those are things that we're figuring out. I mean, right now we're doing the low hanging fruit, which is the music, right? Music
Sure.
and podcasting. That's easy to understand. That's something that a lot of people do every day. So cool. And we have a lot of ways to go to be the best at that. And we want to be the
Hmm.
best in class at that. But then eventually there's other things that we can do.
Hmm.
Elevator sounds, walking through the mall, there's music that has to be curated and played for that. I was talking to someone who they did all the sounds for OnStar.
Ah.
For so like if you have an OnStar in your car, like I know the guy whose company created that. So
Wow.
or jingles. We all
Sure.
know there's famous jingles for brands that we like. There's somebody that has to do that. So I think that there's tremendous opportunity. We just have to continue to push forward and continue to tell the narrative of this is the type of company that we are.
Mm. I'm thinking, and when you say jingle, I thought of the washing machine jingles, like or when your dryer is done, how it does that little jingle beeping thing. I know when I was
Yes.
growing up, my mom's dryer did that, where it would beep this little jingle, and I'm like, this is kind of catchy, and I still remember
Hmm.
it to this day. And somebody had to have created that.
Absolutely, for
And
sure.
it's like, well, you don't think of that. And yeah, I have a friend who does sound design for video games, and he's always creating cool stuff, and he has a really in-depth knowledge of sound design. But when you go to think of it, there's sound everywhere, and you don't think of like
Absolutely.
somebody has to create this. You're at the gas station putting gas in, the machine beeps at you. You're at the grocery store, the credit card machine beeps at you. The beeping as they scan your items, like all that stuff has to be created by somebody or something where was programmed by somebody.
1,000%. I mean, the video games example is a great one, right? Like we do
Hmm.
music supervision for TV, films, and brands. We have yet to do it for video games, but there's a whole world out there where you go out and you hire composers, to
Yeah.
create the score for the video game, or a lot of these video games. They have what they call cut scenes now, where basically it's like the scenes in between where you're actually able to do something, but it's like a scene that's telling the story, and
Mm.
then before it allows you to walk in the door and be in control
Oh,
of the mission. Like
okay.
all of that needs to have sound and music and score. So yeah, it's a wide world.
Yeah, and video games, some of the you get into the die-hard video game players, and some of the music in there is probably the most recognizable. You look at Mario, you look at the Zelda games, you look at Donkey Kong, all those games have
Yeah,
classic music, and there's a massive opportunity in those worlds for that.
absolutely. Even more contemporary NBA 2K.
Yeah,
NBA 2K has one of the best soundtracks, or Madden.
or
They have one of
Madden.
the best soundtracks where you can just, hear your favorite artists, or your artist might give them an unreleased your favorite artist might give them an unreleased song that you
Hmm.
hear first on the video game. So it's an interesting landscape.
So, with how many people do you have working at Radio?
Right now we're 13 people
Okay,
total.
and is that across all the different verticals, or does everybody kind of come together and work collaboratively for all of them?
Yeah, there. So we have people that are specific to a vertical,
Got it.
but we do things to initiate and foster synergy between all of the verticals. So yes, on any given day, every department is talking to one another in some
Mm,
capacity.
mhm,
So yeah, we foster a lot of synergy. I personally, it's kind of interesting to me sometimes because it's kind of natural at this point. But there will be days where I literally talk to every vertical,
mm,
and I, each conversation is completely different. I'm hanging
yeah,
up the phone talking about an artist rollout plan, and then
mm,
next thing I know, I'm having a conversation about a show we have on HBO and the music we're doing for that.
mm,
So it's fun and it's challenging because you just have to constantly be on your toes. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is not rocket science, right? Like I like to think that I'm a rocket scientist, but the fact of the matter is I'm not. I just did something that was simple that made sense. There's all these places that need music or audio. Why not be the provider of that? So essentially, that's what we've created.
yeah, I love that, and I love your vision and wanting to change all of that and simplify it because, um, we've the music industry is so complex, and I feel like there's a lot of parts of it that are unnecessarily complex.
Yeah,
And a lot of people are gatekeepers, and I don't believe in that. I don't think that's fair. It just creates too much competition, and it doesn't make sense. It's like if we're all winning and we're all succeeding, I feel like we're all uh, off to a good start. Um, so, what does a day to day look like for you? I know you briefly talked about on the phone with one vertical, and then you're jumping on the phone with another. But what's kind of a day to day look like for you at Radio?
So, normally I have to, unfortunately, I mean, I'm an early riser, but unfortunately, I have to get up early or else I'd be in a lot of trouble. So I get up very early just to be able to get some time in for myself,
Mm,
which doesn't
sure.
really work because I get phone call. I have people on the East Coast, so I get phone calls at 7 a.m.
Mm,
almost every morning.
wow.
But I get up early so I can carve out time for myself. I try to answer quick emails that I can answer on my phone that I
Mm,
don't need to sit down and be on a computer. So if there's anything that I can quickly answer, I'll try to get those done within the first hour and a half. Um, Watching a lot of ESPN. ESPN is always on in the background, catching up on sports news, answering those quick emails, and then try to eat. Focus on any personal things that need to be done. And then from there, the day is started. So now there's phone calls, there's scheduled phone calls, and we're talking about everything. We're talking about stuff that's happening right now that we're uh, in the process of, talking about stuff that's a month away, talking about stuff that's a year away, or visions that we have or plans and what we need to do to get there.
mm,
And then in between the scheduled phone calls, there's unscheduled phone calls and texts that come in.
sure.
So you handle those accordingly, and a lot of it is communication.
Mm,
Communication. I send about 25, exaggeration, but like I send about 7 to 8 FYI texts a day, and the FYI text is, I just talked to this person. Here's some information that you don't really need to do anything about right now, but you should just know it, right? I send
mm,
those all day to the whole team, to a specific vertical, to a specific person, constantly communicating because I'm kind of the hub for a lot of the information. But
mm,
in that, you still want to tell the team, hey, you need to be talking to this person, build camaraderie with your teammates so that the business can flow more seamlessly. So, anyways, it's a lot of FYI text and messages, and then just trying to put a dent in emails. To be honest, like I can never get to the bottom of my email. I try
oh,
and
no.
I try and I try. Um, because the fact of the matter is every night I go to sleep with X amount of emails still unanswered. So then that rolls over to the next day. And so I try to get through those. And then I try to carve out time through all the busyness. I try to carve out time on the weekends or through vacation to not do anything,
Yes.
to sit down all day and just watch TV all day if that's what I want to do,
Yeah.
because it's in those moments that allow fresh and new ideas to come in. It's in those moments that tell you, hey, we're bleeding money over here. We can just cut that off. Or there's some tough decisions that need to be made. And I'm going to make those tough decisions because it's going to help further the business. But when you're
Mm,
in it every day, you don't give yourself a chance to sit back and process because you're
mm,
just focused on task at hand, task at hand, task at hand. And so I try to find times to carve out where I can just focus and do what I want to do. So, in a nutshell, um, that's kind of the full day and a
mm,
full week, if you will.
mm. Yeah, I love how you're carving stuff out for your time for yourself, and you're taking time on the weekends. And for somebody as busy and running a company, an expanding company that's growing, I would assume very quickly, um, is I would assume your weeks could be easily 90 hours, 100 hours a week, and taking that time for yourself in the mornings and in the on the weekends sets a really good example for other people in the industry as well as your team, for self-care. I think that's something we get caught up in is you have to work, 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 or you're not being productive. It's
Yeah.
such an important thing, and I love when people highlight and share that because it's such an overlooked thing, especially now.
Oh, I agree, 1000%.
Absolutely. Um, so we talked about the day to day, what it looks like for you. And I was watching your interview with Jabari that you did back in August. And I
Mm.
love that interview. It was very, very insightful. And I loved the yellow Crocs that you had on. I think they were amazing. Uh,
Oh, thank you.
they were really cool. You said taking parts of the music industry and building a brand around it. Um, can you dissect that a little bit more? I really like what you said there, and I'm curious to hear more on that.
Yeah, well, thank you for watching that interview for
Yeah,
starters. And those Crocs, those are
yeah.
actually Justin Bieber Crocs, one of my favorites.
Oh,
Um,
damn,
yeah,
I'll have to get
so that
those.
I think they're called the House of Drew or something like that. But yeah,
Yeah,
check
Drew
them
is
out.
his brand. Yeah,
Yes, StockX.
yeah.
Um, but but yeah, in terms of taking parts of the business and building a brand around it, it's simple, right? It's like there's so many things that we do on a day-to-day basis in entertainment that we kind of just do, and we don't really think about it. We don't think about marketing it. We don't think about telling the story of it, but all of it can be. There's a brand that could be added to it. The best
Sure.
example I can use is Off White, right?
Mm,
Rest in peace to Virgil. When you look
yes.
at Off White, one of the claim to fames was they would take a shoe and almost deconstruct the shoe and make it fashion, right? They would have a lace and it literally would say lace on the shoe, right? So the things that you tradition that were probably in a factory that normally Nike would cover up, he deconstructed an Air Force One and said, "These are the parts that you never see, but I'm going to make it fashion." And that's the same way I look at the music industry. So, for example, with music supervision, there's a lot of music supervisors out there. A lot of music supervisors are nameless.
Hmm.
You know the work that they do, but you don't
Hmm.
know the music supervisor. Um, there's a supervisor, Scott Veneer, who did Entourage and did Ballers. Entourage is like the first show that most people recognize that music supervision was a thing. So Scott Veneer is a legend, like in music supervision. But besides him, now you have Jim Malone, who does Euphoria. But
Hmm.
besides them, like before, supervisors were largely unknown. They were just doing the work. And so for me, I'm like, well, let's just bare minimum be the coolest music supervision company out. And so
Hmm.
we take that and we market it. When we do a show, we market the hell out of it. Hey, here's a
Hmm.
playlist that we did. We can talk to the studios and the networks, and we can say, hey, how can we be involved in your marketing? And we're a value add because we have a brand ourselves. So it's really just about deconstructing the music industry and finding parts of the music industry that can a brand can be built around and that you can ultimately sell. Is kind of the thinking behind it.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I think the Off White brand is a really good example, and perfect example actually of what you're trying to do to the music industry. That's obviously fashion, but taking that and applying it to the music industry. And I also read, I believe it was in a Forbes interview or maybe it was Billboard, that you guys did, Raedio did the Biden Harris inauguration playlist.
Exactly. Yeah, we
So
did.
what is included in that? Like, what is that? I don't understand what that playlist would include. What could you talk about that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is because, again, the brand of radio, right?
Sure.
We branded ourselves as an audio everywhere company. We branded ourselves as the ultimate music curator. So if you want to get Biden and Harris to hit a certain demo, their teams are looking for different things to plug them into. Like, oh, you
Mm,
should do Instagram live with this person. You should, do a meetup with this other person. And they were like, for the music component, we should hit up radio, and that's just what
mm.
they did. So essentially, we were the official and only inauguration playlist. And essentially, we just
Wow.
curated a playlist that was based off of the inauguration. And we curated it. We had to send it in for them to sign off on, and we had a couple notes back and forth, and some things we changed and some things we added. But essentially, that was it. And it was a testament to all the different things that we can do.
Hmm.
And that was a huge win for the company. The pickup from a press perspective was great in terms of the storytelling, but the most
Sure.
important piece to all of this is the artists that we featured. A
Mm,
lot of the artists got received an uptick in follows in terms of and in streams because they were featured on this playlist. So again, it's about putting our money where our mouth is and providing opportunities every step of the way. So, this playlist could have just been radio branded, radio pushed, but we gave other people an opportunity. And to me, that's a real win.
mm. Yeah, I love that too. And you highlight a lot of underprivileged artists and artists uh, that need the push, that deserve the push more than Justin Bieber would, or a Drake, or anybody like that. So that playlist, is that something that you just create that people can listen to, that they just sign off on, or is this something that where the music is played during the inauguration, and then it's just excuse me, and then it's just you guys just put it all together and be like, okay, here's all the music that was played during the week of the inauguration.
Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't actually play it at the inauguration. That would have been
Ah, got it.
crazy. That's the next
Yeah.
step. Maybe the next inauguration we could level up and
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
But no, it was just a playlist that was inspired by their music taste.
Mm,
So it's somewhere you can go on any platform: Spotify, Apple, Tidal, Amazon Music, etc., and you can go listen to it.
okay. Okay. I love that. So turning stuff on its head, why is this kind of what the industry needs? I know there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen and continues to happen on a daily basis, but sometimes it gets pretty saturated. And I see a lot of, as a journalist, I see a lot of companies popping up every day, and I'm like, well, that company is the same one as the one from yesterday, and this company is
Mhm.
the one that launched similarly to the one 3 weeks ago. And so, what needs to be turned on its head, and why do you think that's important?
Yeah, I think there's things in the music industry that are just outdated. And there's things in the music industry that are just not very nimble in terms
Mm,
of there's things that are seriously lacking flexibility. And if it was a little bit more flexible, or if we thought about things a little bit differently, we'd have a different outcome in a lot of areas. But
mm,
what's happened is uh, there's a lot of institutions in the music industry that have been very successful at not being nimble, at being old school, and
mm,
not changing the way they're thinking. So it's almost a sentiment of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And
mhm,
so when you get to a place where, for us, we have nothing to lose. We came in it, we said, hey, number one, we're going to be a resource to the music industry. We're not going to come
mm,
into the game trying to take. We're going to be a resource. Music Supervision helped us be an incredible resource, right? Because it's like we're going to do this show, and then we're going to a lot of the artists that we feature, we're giving them their first sync ever. You
yeah,
know, a lot of the artists that we feature are helping them chart. We helped Lizzo chart for Truth Hurts because
Mm,
she was in Someone Great. It was a
yep.
perfect sync, perfect time. That was a 2-year-old song, and Lizzo took off from there. So we came in
Yeah.
being a resource. But with that being said, we had nothing to lose. We came in and we were a fresh faced company, and we were able to say, okay, this is how we want to do things because there's no history internally that makes us do things a certain way. So we can be flexible, we can be nimble, and being that we were able to disrupt and to create new things. I say that to say there are some things in the music industry that have to be the way that they are because
Sure.
that's what it is. But I always want to ask the question why. So if we ask the question why, and it has to be that way, and there's legitimate reasons as to why it has to be that way, cool, so be
Hmm.
it. But if we ask the question why, and the answer is just, oh, it's just that way because that's how it's always been, like to me, that's not good enough. You
Hmm.
need to ask the question, okay, what do we need to do to be better? How can we be better? And so I think it's just again, the theme of this conversation is mindset. So we'll just say that's a mindset thing of how you go about things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. So music supervision is is it one of the main pillars at radio, would you say, at the moment?
Yeah, music supervision, and we do a lot of ancillary business. Our
Mm,
label is a big pillar, but yeah, music supervision is
sure.
one of the more trending
Okay.
verticals.
And for those who don't really know what music supervision is, could you briefly give a kind of 30-second summary of it?
Yeah, so music supervision is essentially the art, if you will, of picking and choosing music for for well, it could be podcasts, but for TV, film, commercials, or even podcasts. So
Mm,
you hear something or you see something, and you're like, this scene or this project, this content needs a music component. Then we pick the music to complement that component. And then that's on the creative side. But then on the business side, we go and do all the business for it. So we go and clear the song. We make sure all the rights holders are signed off on. We then pay all the rights holders. So that's kind of an admin part of it as well. So it's picking the music and then making sure you're handling all the business for the music.
mm. So I've had a few music supervisors on the show, and it's one of the topics that I'm getting into. I want to get into sync licensing as an artist. Um, so I'm building up my repertoire and my catalog. So what does the process look like for clearing music? Is it something like where obviously you can't place a song without all the copyright owners signing off, but is that something as simple as reaching out via email and having them confirm, or is there paperwork involved? And what does that kind of look like from, hey, we want to use your song, to getting it placed?
On the simple end, it's just that it's sending an email. Hey, this is how we're going to use your song. This is the portion of the song we want to use. This is how long we're going to play this song. This is when the project comes out. This is the platform that the project comes out in, and this is how much we pay you, right?
Mm,
That's the simple end of it, and that's kind of it's actually the process.
mm,
But what happens is that it's never that easy because you reach out for a song. There's 5 rights holders. You get a hold of the 4 of the 5, and then no one knows where the 5th person is, and now you got to go track them down. So that's a thing. You find out, or if a song has a sample, oh my, especially
mm,
in rap music, everything is a sample.
yeah.
So if it has a sample, now you got to go clear with the original rights holders, and you got to clear with the person who made the new song, right? So it's that it's emailing, it's calling, it's pulling up at people's jobs, it's calling your buddies and saying, hey, have you ever, you do a lot of sync clearance or sync licensing, calling them up and saying, hey, have you ever cleared this song? Who are the people that you have? So it's a
Mm,
very, very convoluted process.
yeah.
And honestly, it's what separates the pros from the amateurs very quickly because a lot of people want to be in music supervision, and they think that it's just, I know music, I know artists, and I like TV, so I can place the perfect song with this moment. That's cool. But then when you start getting into the weeds of the business side of it, is really what starts to separate people. So I
Mm.
always tell people, if you can nail the business side of it and you have a creative mind, you can be one of the best out, because there's some music supervisors that only want to do creative. They don't even want to touch the business. And there's a world
Mm.
for them, but it's almost kind of operating at half capacity.
Mm. So, I mean, when you have an artist or a song that you want to place in a show or a commercial or whatever, um, and let's say you find out there's a sample, will you pass on that song and find another song that doesn't have samples and that you can clear more quickly, or will you take the time to clear the major publishing and all that stuff? Like if somebody used a Marvin Gaye song, for example, as a sample.
It's a case by case basis. It
Okay,
depends on, if the sample is going to cost a lot of money, then you might walk away from it if you don't have the budget.
sure.
If the sample is a very complicated sample and you don't have the time, then you might walk away from it.
Mm.
But as a general rule of thumb, just because a song has a sample, we at least try. And there's other factors that may make us say, okay, we're gonna have to pass on this song. But just by the simple fact that it has a sample, um, it can be annoying, and we
Yeah.
can, mentally going into it, you kind of already know the battle that you're about to fight. But other than that, um, we still push through with it.
Okay. Okay. And for independent artists or somebody who's just kind of coming up and wanting to get a song placed in a TV show, what are some of the fees that they could expect to receive in return for a placement? I know it varies quite significantly, but say for example, like an HBO show, what could somebody expect for something like that?
Yeah, you're right. It varies so much. There's so
Yeah.
many. It depends on the use. Like, how is the song featured? How long is the song?
Mm.
What's the show? Who are you as an artist? Like, what's your leverage?
Mm.
Um, or bottom line, what's the budget? You could be
Uh,
the greatest artist of all time, but the budget is a budget. So
yeah.
there's so many factors that relate to that. But um, you know, we've cleared things for as little as 1,000 to 100,000. So
Mm.
I hate to just give that range. It literally is anything. And there's so many different math and science to it as to why something would work over something else.
Yeah. And I always ask that question because a lot of people think like, "Oh, I'm gonna be placing a Netflix show that's $5,000." But no, there's
Yeah,
a lot more that goes into it, and hearing from
right.
experts like you and yourself, it's like, no, it could be $1,000, it could be $250,000. It totally varies on so many different factors. So it's really good to hear that confirmation. Like, no, it's
Yeah.
every situation is unique and every song is different. I have heard, however, that different artists have, like, for example, obviously Justin Bieber or Drake could leverage a lot more for a sync licensing fee versus
Oh
a
yeah.
smaller independent artist who's just coming up. However, that shouldn't deter you from negotiating and getting a larger fee, because I've heard of independent artists landing $150,000 sync placements, even though they don't have any power. This the song works and they really want it and they have the budget to do it.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, if you get a commercial, like we talked about cars earlier, you get a car commercial, the fee may be out of this world. You can
Yeah.
be an artist that is just getting started, has one song on Spotify, but you landed a car commercial. The fee can be out of this world. So it is about, the artist leverage that they have, but then it's also about where it's placed. If it's a short film, that's one thing. If it's a network TV, it's one thing. If it's a cable TV, it's another thing. So it just all depends.
Yeah, I like I feel like if I were to pitch one of my songs to, say, Audi or Mercedes, and they wanted to use it in a commercial, and they came back and were like, "Oh yeah, we'll give you $100,000 for this," I would be like, "Well, that's too much." Is that the right question, or how would somebody like that? Because like for me, that's a lot of money. That's the most money I've ever received in my life. But for
Right.
an independent artist who may not understand that these things can garner a lot of money, what is that mindset going into something like this so they can understand and make sure that they are valued and that they aren't underselling themselves?
If they were offered the $100,000.
Yeah, like if they were offered $100,000, like that's what they can pay. That's what the budget is offering.
Sure. I mean, you got to take it. Number one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes you got to take it, and you have to remember that you're a business. And
Mm,
a lot of times people get into situations that they don't want to be in the music industry because of money. And anytime that you can get an opportunity to get funding, um,
mm,
where you don't have to give up a lot, you take it. If you get a
mm.
sync opportunity, it's a license. You can go and do it for this one car commercial. Then, sorry, Siri. You can go and do it for this one car commercial, and then you can go do that same song for a McDonald's commercial in the same day if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So you got to take it. And again, back to the mindset thing. It's a mindset. Understand that you are a business, that you need cash flow, that you need money in your bank to be able to go out and do other things for your business. So you take it, and I don't think I understand the the reservation around large sums of money, but it's your art and you're a business at the end of the day. So you got to do what you have to do to keep the lights on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And $100,000 will keep the lights on for quite a while, I would assume.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely lights and everything else.
Lights and everything else, and might even be able to pay off your student loans and everything. That's amazing. So for you land an Audi commercial or a Mercedes commercial, then you can put that on your resume as well. And then the next commercial, you have more leveraging power because you've already been placed. Now you can ask for 125,000 or 110,000, and you just have that leveraging power. And as your resume grows within a specific niche, whether that's commercials, TV shows, movies, whatever it is that you want to specialize in, that just gives you more bidding power in that space. Like, well, if you want to use my song, I'm going to be the best because I've had these 15 placements already. My music works. Here's my fee.
That's absolutely right. We are in an industry where it's all about credibility and social proof. People want to
Mm,
see, they want to feel comfortable choosing you because somebody else chose you. And if
mm,
somebody else chose you two or three times, great. Someone told you five or six times, even better. And
mm,
so you have to understand that. And at the end of the day, you have to start somewhere. So,
absolutely.
there's going to be situations where you're pitching, and you've never landed anything. And so you have to hope that someone takes a chance on you. But that one chance that someone takes on you can lead to three or four more chances. So you're absolutely right with that.
hmm And any chance is better than no chance. Like, even if it's a small $3,000 placement for an independent film, put it on your resume. That's social proof. It shows that you've done it. You can do it. You've been through the process of clearing, and you know what you're going to do and what kind of music you can go after. And then obviously you're going to switch and tailor your craft as you go and you learn. That's how it should be. But understanding that every little, even if it's not that Audi commercial for $100,000, it might be a smaller one for 10,000. That's a win. Take it and move on. What's the next step? How do I get that $25,000 one? How do I get this commercial or working with this company that you really want to work with? It's all in the pudding. It's all in just working hard and staying focused.
No, that's exactly right. And sometimes you may not get paid, but what's the opportunity cost outside of dollars and cents? Is
Yeah,
this going to give me
absolutely.
more, marketing power? Is it going to give me something splashy to put on my resume? You
Mhm.
have to ask yourself those questions. And I'm not one to ever count anyone's pockets or tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing
Sure.
with their money. But I will say that there is an opportunity sometimes in not getting paid if they don't have the budget or taking a lower fee.
Mm.
So you have to just kind of be emotionally intelligent about your money and about your career, and just be honest and real with yourself to figure out how you want to take your career.
Mhm. I've also worked with people where the opportunity hasn't paid, but I really, really enjoyed working with that person or that team, and that greatly outvalued a paycheck. And now these
Hmm.
people are friends and people that I can count on and trust. So now I can bounce ideas off of them. I can go to them with any questions. They can come to me with any questions. And it's a very open relationship where there's a really solid foundation of trust. So having that trust within the industry can really take you to your next step. Because if you have a question on something, you know who you can go to, and you're not going to get screwed over or lied to, or they're just out to take advantage of you.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You have to definitely keep your guards up and make sure that you're not being taken advantage of, but you should always be open to opportunities and navigate your way through them.
Of course. So kind of the last question here, we're coming up on an hour. I'll kind of round this off with kind of a one or two final questions here is, um, let's say an artist gets placed in a sync place. I mean, we're on the topic of sync licensing. So kind of continuing on with that is, when an artist gets placed in a TV show or a commercial or whatever, what are some things that they should have set up? Like, let's say you have an artist that gets that placement and they only have one song on Spotify. They haven't updated their Instagram in 6 months. Their profile picture is really blurry and all that stuff. Like, do they need to do anything to make themselves look more professional online, or is it just you could just what's the process after that?
You should absolutely, start to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, just because you never know that one placement. You don't know how it's going to travel. With
Mm,
TikTok, there's things that pop up on a regular basis that 5-year-old songs, and someone decided to do a video to it. Now it's taking off. So you should always stay ready, right?
yep.
But yeah, you want to upgrade. Make sure your social media is where it should be. Making sure there's a link in your bio to your website, or to some like a link to your album, or whatever your Spotify is. You should definitely have that. On the business side of things, you should be signed up with a PRO. That's a
Mm,
performing rights organization that collects all of your money. It's ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. And there's one more that Azov just created,
GMR.
and I forget the name. Yes. So you want to sign up for that one as well. Is it Global Media Rights? Something like that?
I believe so. Yes, I
Yeah,
believe so.
I have to double check. But nonetheless, you should be signed up to all the PROs. Um, and then you should make sure you have probably some type of business license, depending on where you are. Don't rush and get a business license. But depending on where you are in your career and where you're trying to take, you should have that set up. Make sure you have a business bank account, things like that. And then you should always, always, always be in control of the paperwork for that song, right? How
Mm,
many writers were on that song? What are the splits? Is this producer getting 5%? This other songwriter's getting 7%? Whatever that is, you need to know that. And you need to have things on file, because if I come to you and I'm in a rush and I love your song, but I need to clear it quickly, I need all the information. Give me all the emails, give me all the phone numbers, give me all the splits, so I can quickly make my phone calls, send my emails, and be done with it. So you
mhm,
want to think about making the process as seamless as possible.
mm. Yeah, I've heard make it as easy as possible for the music supervisor. So if they need to clear it, they can do it in 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
as easy as possible, if you have all of your songwriters, all the master rights holders, the publishing information, your IPI numbers, all of that stuff lined up,
Hmm.
it makes it very easy for them to just clear it and be done and move on. And that'll sends a good message to them, like, oh, if I need another song, Lennon's got his stuff together, because I didn't have to do anything. He had everything lined up. So if I need another song, I know he knows what he's doing.
Yep.
And
That's
that's
exactly
that's
right.
critical. I have a friend who had a music supervisor reach out to him, and she needed something in 6 hours. So he tried to make something and it didn't work out. But that just goes to show, she's like, I need something in 6 hours. And if you can't take this, let me know. But that just goes to show, like, if you have a song that you did 3 years ago and they need the stems, and you don't know, you haven't
Mm.
kept in contact with the
Stems.
co-writers, you don't know what the publishing company is. And this was at 3 in the morning. It's like these
Hmm.
opportunities come through all times of the night. And if you got to have your stuff together, if you have a spreadsheet where you can just be like, oh, yep, here's all that information, boom, done, moving on. They can clear it.
That's You are speaking the truth. That
Yeah,
is, and those requests, believe it or not, they do happen. Hey, we
yeah,
need this cue. You're an artist or you're a composer. We need this cue. And what's happening is they're talking to you and they're talking to 3 other people at the same time. And whoever brings the cue the fastest and the best is going to get paid.
mm,
Lucky, cool enough, sometimes in those situations, they will give you a kill fee, but the kill fee may pale in comparison to what the actual fee was. They might say, hey, look, I need you to submit these cues. If we don't choose one of yours, we'll give you $250 to $500 for your Atari. But then
Mm,
if we do pick one of your cues, it's $10,000.
mm,
So those types of things happen. But you're exactly right.
mm. What is a kill fee? I've never heard of that. Is that when they don't use your song and they pay you for your time?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard
And
of
that's
that.
not
So
something that's offered all the time, but
sure,
it is something that is offered for sure.
cool. So if it does come up, and you'll know what it is for those listening. You'll know what a kill
Or
fee is then.
sometimes called a demo fee. Demo
Oh,
fee, kill fee are interchanged.
okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that before, but interesting. Um, cool. Well, that pretty much wraps up all the questions that I have. We're coming up to an hour. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know you're a really, really busy guy, but I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me for an hour and sharing all of the information that you did. It's very helpful for somebody like me who's looking to get into this industry as an artist and getting placements. It's all this information. Any information I can get is always very helpful, and then of course sharing it with others is always when somebody wins, we all win. That's what this is all about, is helping everybody. So thank you for your time. And how can the listeners keep up with you and or Raedio?
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. And, I appreciate, I've definitely watched some of the other episodes. The one with
Oh,
Milana was great.
oh,
So
thank you.
love the show, and I love the work and the time and attention and detail that you put into this. So great
Oh,
job.
thank you. Thank you.
In terms of where you can find me, I'm at Noni Biz on all platforms. So that's N as in Nancy, O-N as in Nancy, I-B-I-Z-Z. So it's Nonibizz. Twitter, Instagram, I can be found everywhere.
Cool.
And for radio, it's at the radio, Raedio, on all platforms as well.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll link all those in the show notes as well, so everybody can easily access them and reach out if they have any questions. But thanks again, Benoni. I really appreciate your time. This has been a really good conversation.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.